Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right. My next guest hails from Albany, Georgia. She is a multi-genre, best-selling fiction author. She is a graduate of the University of Maryland and is an honored member of Sigma Alpha Pi. She has written 10 novels and counting, one of which is an anthology called Loving Black Men, for which proceeds were donated to the NAACP. Her work has also been featured in several magazines, and ironically, she became a writer and interviewer with Swag Magazine California and Swag Magazine South. Ladies and gentlemen, author Untamed. Untamed, thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast, and I appreciate you being here.
Oh, you're welcome. No doubt. I am honored to be here tonight with you.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. So you go by the name of Untamed.
Yes, I do.
Where did that name come from?
Untamed, and I'll say this, I know a lot of people automatically assume it's because of the genre, because it has this connotations of, sexuality and risque, but actually it became a part of me because when I first started writing, I was a little bit afraid to kind of write how I truly wanted to write because I'm a PK. I'm a preacher's kid. For those who don't know what PK is, preacher's kid. So I was a little scared, a little timid to write exactly how I wanted to write. And so when I let go of that and that fear and just said, okay, you know what? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the way that I feel, the way that's in my heart. And once I did that, I saw the difference in my writing. And so that's how the pen name was birthed, Untamed.
Interesting. So being a child of a preacher, how was that? Like, how is that? Because you still one.
Yeah, I'm still one. Yeah, that had to stop. But, it's cool. It's ironic. It's so funny because my dad, he's the preacher and he really, he gets it and he supports the writing. So, it's I always thought it would be that hang up, but it hasn't been. And I think being the kid of a preacher, it gives me a lot of different perspectives. And it also adds to my writing because I also throw some faith-based learning and, things in there to kind of enhance it and give it a different perspective for the characters. So you get a little bit of, that side of me as well when you see my writing. And it's not like fire, hell, and brimstone. It's, it's real simplistic so that it relates to people of today.
So when did your writing journey begin?
I was 13. I was actually given a poetry assignment by my 8th grade teacher. Well, the entire class was. And they taught us how to write all these different forms of poetry. And she said, you got to create a book and do the assignment. So when she gave us the assignment, I killed it, made an A. And I was like, I love writing. And then I read this book by an author named Laura Hewitt called Coming of Age. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to get into story writing. I want to write poetry. So that's how everything began for me.
So when you were a young age, I read that you won a CocaCola Young Writers Award, and you also got an honorable mention at the Sandy Hills Writers Conference. So
yes,
what ages were those accolades given to you, and then how was that at that age? Like, what was it like, that experience?
I will say, I was 16 for the CocaCola Young Writers Award, and that was something that took me by surprise. It was actually just submitting some poetry and short stories through school, and they would say, "Oh, you could be in this competition," and they were just kind of judging the work, and they were like, if you win, you'll get a CocaCola Young Writers Award. And so they didn't tell us until like the end of the school year. And we got this award, me and two other people. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. So that one was by surprise. The Writers Conference, the honorable mention there, I got in college. I just decided to enter into this conference, and during the conference, you could submit your writing, you know, for competition. And during that time, I just really started writing like short stories, moving into novels. And I was amongst a lot of experienced writers, people who had been writing for years, novels for years. So, you know, they had their top 3, and then they had honorable mention. They only had 2. And I was on the honorable mention list, and that was, you know, an honor to be amongst so many other writers and authors who have been doing this for a long time. To even have my work be amongst those and thought of as something that was honored enough to be, you know, fall into that category. It was, you know, truly an honor for me. And that's something that still, you know, I still take pride in every day.
So at that age, when you won those awards and you were amongst all those other young writers, did you recognize and realize the type of talent you had at that moment, especially winning the Coca-Cola Young Writers Award?
It was one of those things where I recognized it, but I don't think I didn't fully embrace it. So it's like, I knew I was good at writing, but it wasn't anything that I really wanted to do at the time. It was more like a hobby for me. So I didn't embrace it the way that I do now.
Okay, so are you originally from Maryland or from Georgia?
I'm originally from Georgia. I actually went to school. I got 1 degree online. So that is my bachelor's of administration. I got online from the University of Maryland. But I was in Georgia the entire time.
Okay. All right. So Georgia is like the mecca. I know Atlanta is like the mecca of like, it seems to be like the mecca of like book festivals, and every event book related, it just seems to be down that area. So how, yes, like as a writer, is that like a plus, or is that like a kind of like an oversaturation thing with like, even with music? Because even like Atlanta, like it's popular for how many rappers, and you know, so you see so many people going from the north and the west to go to Atlanta for opportunity. Do you see, like, when you come in contact with bookstores and Barnes and Nobles and things like that, libraries, and even, is it easy to get to them because it's more independent writers down there, or is it like a harder situation because it's, I guess they got the pick of the litter, you know what I mean, in some sense?
Oh, wow. See, and I actually love talking about this, because that is the thing, is if you're in Atlanta, like if you're actually live in Atlanta, it's very easy. I mean, and I don't stay too far. I stay actually outside of Atlanta in another city. But when you go to Atlanta, it's like a totally different world. Atlanta is, I always say, Atlanta should be separate from Georgia, because it seems like it operates completely different than any other part of Georgia.
Damn.
It's like you go to Atlanta and you have all this opportunity, and it's very easy. You know, they're very welcoming. But Georgia is made up of a lot of smaller towns outside of Atlanta. And so what you run into is that it's actually more difficult in the smaller cities to get your work out there versus going to Atlanta. So it's kind of like a twofold, you know, if you're not in Atlanta directly, then it's a little bit harder. So you tend to have to go to Atlanta or go out of Georgia, really, and then bring it back into the smaller towns for you to get a little bit of traction.
That's crazy. So it's like, oh my gosh. So do you do a lot of book festivals and stuff over there? I know the 556 chicks, they have their, the book group. They got their big festival, usually in like July or something like that. Do you usually do a lot of book festivals down there?
I did do 556. I've done smaller venues, and I do like smaller book signings. I'm just now starting to get out to do like the bigger venues. I always said I had more of the old school author flavor with me. I always kind of wanted to be in the background. Back in the
Oh,
day,
you want to be out there?
back in the day when you just read the book and you really didn't know who the author was. That's kind of how I
Right,
was,
yeah.
at
Oh,
first. Yeah. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm embracing, getting out into the crowds. I enjoy it.
So how was that? Like, how was that experience now, knowing that not even just in writing, I think in every aspect of entertainment, if you're in some form of entertainment business, it seems like you have to be personable. You have to show face. You have to interact. You know what I mean? So even with like musicians, athletes, it's like mandatory to have for the consumers to have that type of reach to you. Like, how is that embracing that new type of style of entertaining?
It's fun, but it's draining. The thing about authors, a lot of authors are introverts. So, they love to write, but they like, okay, I want to be outside of the scene, because we always think of that when we think of interaction, we think more of like artists, singers, rappers, things like that. But authors are a lot more introverted. So it's a newer thing for authors to kind of get out there, the way that you see other entertainers do. But it's fun because once you start interacting with people who, love to read and other authors, you kind of form like this club, I say, where it's this members only type of deal and you all know what you're talking about. You love to talk about your book characters, the plot. So
right.
it started to take a little wind, take a little flight. And so you get to enjoy it and it brings us out of our shell a bit more. So I'm starting to embrace it and I love it. I love interacting with the readers. I love when they get excited, about the books and when they relate to it. And I think that's what really gives us a lot of spark, and, so now, we're starting to become the new rock stars of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, that's the truth. So going back to being a preacher's kid, when you released your first book, what was that, 2012?
Yes.
But first, when you published your first published book, how was that? What genre was it? Was it urban fiction?
It was urban fiction.
How was that, like, breaking it to your, like, family and friends? Like, I know, because that first debut, you're so nervous. You're like, you're telling people, don't read it near me. Like, you know what I mean? Read it when you get home. Right. How was that? Like, how was that experience, especially with the parents and everything?
Right. Okay. So my mom is deceased when I released it, but my aunt, who is like my mother, she, her and my dad, they're, of course, my pillars. So, of course, by my dad being a preacher, I was really reserved with him. And I have a very open relationship with my aunt. And so, talking to them, I was really leery. Like with the rest of my family, I was like, oh, whatever. You read it, you don't. But, with those two in particular, I was trying to be, very suave in how I approached it to them, and just try to slide it in there really smooth. And I was thinking my aunt would catch it. So, I'm like, with my aunt, I'm like, okay, Auntie, when the book comes out, it's urban fiction. And she was like, okay, so what does that mean? And I'm like, it's urban. And, I'm trying to figure out how to actually tell it to her. And she's like, so what do you mean? What's wrong with it? So finally I was just like, well, Auntie, it has some cursing, some sex in it. And she's like, oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So I go to my dad, the preacher, and I'm like, okay, Dad, the book is urban fiction. And before I can finish, she's like, so it's got some cursing and some sex. So I was like, I'm definitely your kid.
Uh-oh, Pops.
Like, he knew.
Pops was ready.
He's like, he's got some cursing and some sex. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely your kid. I can tell.
Yeah, he was ready for it. So what made you choose the genre? Well, I know you jumped from different genres. I know you could pen any genre basically. So what made you choose which genres to specifically focus in?
Urban fiction I chose simply because it just fit what I was writing at the time, which the story that I was penning was basically about 4 young ladies who were teen mothers. And I wanted to tell that from a perspective of relatability, so it's going into when they're older. So it's basically them having to live and learning how to be young mothers and survive through love and the different family circumstances that they went through. And that was important to me because a lot of times, especially in the African American community, but minority community altogether, we don't talk about issues. We kind of just brush them under the rug and deal with it. So it was important for me to just tell it from that perspective, because the feedback I wanted to do and the dialogue I wanted to just start was that you're not in this alone. There's plenty of teen mothers. There's plenty of people who've gone through family issues and, abusive relationships and different things, that add to this dynamic. And that's the reason why it was chosen, more so because I wanted it to be a realistic story.
Right. So you finish college.
Yes.
You have your passion. You have your passion for writing. You're good at it. You won some awards at a younger age. So the time comes around, obviously, before you publish your first one. What was the goal when it came to writing? What was that moment where you said, okay, I'm going to do this and actually try to get a book published out here?
Oh, man. For whatever reason, I went through this little phase where I really wasn't writing like I used to. I don't know if it was, growing up, going to college, getting married, kids. I just wasn't writing. And then I got this itch. And anybody who's like truly passionate about writing, they tell you it comes a time where if you do stop, that you get this itch to write again. But this time when I got it again, I was writing and I just felt like I wanted to do more with it. And I was kind of, teetering around saying, okay, I don't know if I want to be a published author or not. And I actually, because raised in church, my first thing, go to God. Okay, what do you want me to do? God, if you want me to publish, give me a sign, because I'm just not going to put myself out there like that. And so I never forget when I was really battling about whether or not I wanted to publish. Tyler Perry was getting some type of award. I wasn't even watching the award show. I was walking through my house. My husband was watching it. And I stopped because I heard Tyler Perry say, you're meant to do something when you try to leave it alone, but it won't leave you alone. And that's the moment I knew. That was the moment I knew.
Wow. So One Karma Publishing comes around. How did you meet that company? How did you stumble upon them?
I stumbled upon them through Twitter. I was on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And one thing that I was becoming really big on was just finding, authors to follow and, talking and just trying to stumble and find my way into the industry. And social media was newer at the time, but it was the best way to go because it's like, you find someone who's an author and you can ask them questions. It was really personable on Twitter back then. So I found an author who was actually with One Karma at the time. And I asked him, I said, oh, well, how did you, get with them? Did you submit? Did you have to do a query? I'm asking all these questions. And they're like, oh, okay, you just, you can go on their website and do the submission. And if they like it, they'll contact you. And I said, okay. And so I went online, read up about the company, and I said, well, I'll submit and see what happens. And like 2 weeks later, they reached out.
Damn. That's crazy. So how was that moment? Like you actually, you know what I mean? So how was that moment where, did you have a book signing for your first book?
Yes, I did. I had a book signing. Oh my gosh. I
was preparing for that.
Man, it's nerve-wracking, but exciting. It's like, it's like when you're a kid and you were getting ready for that big birthday party, that milestone birthday party when you're like 10. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to to the arcade with my friends. So it's like that. It's like that 1 in a million feeling. But every time you actually release a book, you get the same feeling. But that first letter of acceptance when you get signed. It was just, I was on cloud 9,000. I was like, I could not believe I was about to be a published author. But it is definitely, something that's exciting, exhilarating, but it's also nerve-wracking because now, that your dream is coming to fruition. You're like, okay, now I actually have to put my work out there for public ridicule. So that's, you have all of those nervous energy, the balls and stuff, because you're wondering, okay, if people are going to love my writing, they're going to hate it. And, it's one thing when you have a few select people saying, yeah, it's really good. And then you open it up to the world and they're like, it's trash. So,
right. Yeah.
That's your biggest fear is that you like, okay, I want to write because I want to be an impact or, I have a passion for it. But I just wanted to be well received too. So, but you take it all in stride because there's no other feeling like that to know that you're actually living out your dream. And I think that was the biggest thing that, that takes place is that once you realize this is your dream and it's coming into fruition, it pales everything else into comparison.
Right. Yeah, and that's the truth. So in 2014, you decided to self-publish. What made you do that from the 2 years prior?
I decided to become a self-published author because I wanted more creative control. When you go traditional,
break that down for the writers starting out that don't truly understand what that means to them.
Exactly. When you're under a traditional publisher, they dictate everything, everything about your book except for the crux of your writing. So they dictate the editing, they dictate the book covers, they dictate the release dates, they dictate any type of marketing, anything that comes out. They are the ones who, they have the final say for it. And I wanted more of a creative control because I'd always been the type whenever I, thrust myself into something, I learn it. So and that's one thing that I would encourage any author to do is that don't just sit back and just write the book and be the author. Learn the business, learn the industry of the things that you do. Even if you are not proficient in editing, learn what a good editor does. Learn about the different types of editing.
And it's supposed to do.
And it's supposed to do. Learn the different types of editing and what they do and what they're supposed to do so that even if you can't do it for yourself, what they're supposed to be doing. So you can have your own back, essentially. And so I wanted the creative control because I wanted to be able to control when I released my books. I wanted to control my artwork. I wanted to control some of the things I say because let's be real, too, even with editing, you have editors who will change your writing style. And sometimes it's necessary for the technicalities of the grammatical part. But some of it is just specifically for the story. And if there's something that you want in there that you want it to be in there because that it's going to be impactful to your story, then it's best that you have that type of control because at the end of the day, you won't sometimes with some publishers they'll chop it up a little bit and you might not be too happy with it. But that was my biggest thing. I wanted more creative control because I had a series coming out and I wanted to be able to release those books when I wanted to, not to have them delayed, for a certain length of time. So that was my biggest reason.
So you've been in the self-published moment at 2014 to up until 2018 when you actually signed a major deal with Urban Books.
Yes.
How was that? How was that? That's like you went to every layer of being a writer.
I did.
Every single one.
I I did. And I think that is, man, that's a journey and a blessing of its own. So like, that tradition, I was signed traditionally, but it was a smaller independent publishing house. And then I went self-published. And so then 2018, I went to major publishing with Urban Books Kensington. And that's a feeling of true accomplishment when you get a major book deal. Because now it's like, okay, nationally and internationally, you have eyes on you, that's different than the smaller publishing houses. And that was such a major accomplishment to just be able to secure those deals and just know this work is something that they value enough to, extend the deal. So I was just, I'm still, like, I was on cloud 9,000, then I went from cloud 9,000 to cloud 900,000. I'm still riding that wave. I am still on that wave. And that's a long road a journey that I had to be on to get to that level. But, it came at a time where I felt like I was mature in my writing. I was maturing in the industry and learned a lot along the way. So I'm glad that it came when it came, because it gave me time to be able to develop myself, to hone my skills, and to learn, not as much as I possibly can. But I knew a lot more at that stage in the game than I did when I first started.
Right. Heck yeah. So what was the mindset behind signing that deal? Was it kind of like, because at that point, I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but you were like honed in the game. So you knew, so them approaching you was different than them approaching somebody that was just writing and didn't know the business behind it. You know what I mean? So how was that approaching it? Was that the goal all along, or was it kind of hesitant? Just like reading between the lines, making sure the contract was right, just because you knew the game at that point?
It was a little bit of both, because I wanted to, for me, at this point, being a writer and being in the literary world, realm altogether, was pretty much everything that I was doing full time. So I started to dive into other aspects. So I was like, you know what? At this point, in order for me to be able to accomplish this goal over here, I may need, to allow my works to go and be back traditionally published, because it's hard to try to maintain your own books and then you're trying to do other things. Like for me, I went into podcasting and went into Untamed Publishing, which is providing those independent services like book trailers and editing. So when you start doing other things, you become secondary. And I had to say, okay, well, look, I'm still an author first and foremost. But because I knew, the industry, I knew, what to look for. That approach was something, and it wasn't forced. And I feel like if you have to force it, then it's maybe not for you. It was one of those where the deal just was for my benefit. And that's what you really have to make sure, that anything that you're getting into is going to be more beneficial for you in the end as an author than the company. They're going to make their coins. Trust me, they're going to make their money. But,
right.
but the bottom line is that that's their bottom line. Regardless of what comes and goes, it's the money for them. But, and it may be other things, for the author. It may be a mixture of the money, exposure, the time it takes. Because just being honest, being self-published isn't for everyone. They don't want to have to do all of the behind the scenes. And everything. I get it. Because when you're self-published, it's 100% on you. And it's more than just writing the story. I can guarantee you that.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. It's you got to pick out your events. You got to pick out the book cover. You got to build a team, basically. And
you got to build a team. Exactly. And I was fortunate, because I will say this, networking will be key to any author. Like, you have to network, not just with other authors and readers, but you have to network with people in the industry who do other things, graphics designers and editors and, proofreaders, beta readers. You have to network with people and get you a solid team that you can trust, on your side. And I was fortunate because I began networking without realizing I was networking. But that's just kind of how I am. I'm low key, but I love to support other people. And so in supporting other people, I began to network with them. So when I made the decision to self-publish, I was like, okay, I made this decision. Now, how am I going to go about this? And then I started looking around and I was like, oh, wait, but I networked with a graphic designer, a couple of them who I trust, and I've networked with some editors, so it was easier for me because I'd built a team of people who I trusted around me. So when I went out on my own, I wasn't on my own. You know what I mean?
Right. Definitely. And you, when securing that deal, how much did your work play into it? Do you believe played into it? Like you having published 10 books already and having a body of work to present to them to show your craft. How important was that? Or wasn't important at all?
It was absolutely important because one of the things they do look at is your body of work. How much have you written? How, mature is your writing? How honed in on your craft are you? That is a big deal for them when they're considering books. And, also, if you're able to continue to produce content, of course, if you produce like 10 books in 4 or 5 years, oh yeah, you can come up with content on a dime. You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. It's like, okay, you can produce content like full length novels, within, short time frames in case there is a type of assignment, because they do have different assignments that come up to say, hey, we might lead an author to start this anthology or do a series over here. And we need someone who could actually produce a full length novel in like 90 days. You know what I mean? So it's like that is definitely one thing that they seriously do look into, is your content, and how much you can have produced, and the quality and the quantity are the biggest things.
So when you secured that deal, you went through it. You had an agent, right? You worked with an agent?
Yes, I did. I worked with the agent. I first had to land my agent. Let me back. I had to land my agent first because what people kind of don't get is that differently from sports or, music, where you kind of just go and hire an agent, who could represent you. Literary world works a bit differently, where you actually have to land an agent. Like this, it's really hard to secure an agent. They have to get your work and look at it and see if they want to actually take you on as a client. And that's where a lot of query letters come in. You have to query agents. And I was at this, like I said, I was at this impasse. So I was like, okay, I need some help. I can't do all of this on my own anymore. I need to be able to, I want to actually attempt to try to land a major publishing deal. So I was like, I need to get an agent. And so I had to query, one who I truly trusted. The leader of the agency, she'd worked with Streamer Books and Zane. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go for the gusto. And I, did everything. I did the query letter, did my submission, which is normally submitting to them like the first few chapters of your work. And called me back within 2 days. And we had a couple of conversations, and it was official. I got my official, hey, I want to represent you. I love your work. I believe in it. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I just,
damn.
It was crazy. It is so crazy, but I have enjoyed the process. And I feel like everything happens with time. I don't think that I would have been able to secure the agency I did when I first started versus when I did, a couple of years in. So it's like, okay, I'm always a believer that things happen when they're supposed to. So, I've always said, I always want to be inclined with the right move. That was my first goal before I even entered. I was like, guide my steps, because I need to make the right moves and not the wrong ones. And I've done good so far. I've done good so far. So I'm excited.
Right, that's dope. That's real dope. I swear, if it's like author's bucket list. You checked off almost every single thing. Honestly, like every accomplishment someone could do. You know what I mean? Landing an agent, landing a small deal, landing a big deal, doing it on your own, starting your own publishing company. Like it's everything. You didn't check everything. I don't know, man. Your list getting kind of small. You want to
I have to create some more.
Aim higher. Yeah. Like what else is there to do?
What?
So
I mean, I am working on turning one of my books into a movie, so that's the next.
And there we go. Which one is it? I'm curious.
The View.
I just read it. Oh, we're going to get into that later. We getting into that later. I'm glad I read that one too. So you actually started Untamed Publishing too.
Yes,
and
I did.
You got the podcast, you got the publishing, you got the editing, you got the ghostwriting.
Yes.
So how I'm like, damn, you got So how is that? How is that going from to the boss's side of things? You know what I mean? In terms of publishing. Let's start with publishing.
Oh my gosh. That is a different animal altogether. You know, it's one thing to be the boss of yourself, but when you start, going into a business where you're actually having to take in clients and do work for them, that is a different type of beast. And it's something I did not want to do. Why not? Actually, I was focusing on me, and I was just like, I don't want to, do anything working with other people. I'm an author. That's all I want to do. I'm content. And I kept, again, I was having these odd dreams about starting Untamed Publishing. And I was just like, nope, not going to do this. It's one of those things where I was like, I knew it was a message from God. And I was like, no, and I actually sat there and I was like, you know what, God, I don't care what you say. I'm content. I'm not doing it. I'm an author. That's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. And of course, he laughed at me and showed me, no, you're going to do what I want you to do. So I actually ended up having an author friend who me and her would talk, sporadically. And this particular time, she called me out of the blue for something completely non-author related. And in the conversation, we wound up going into the fact that she was like, I've had editors who just, they've screwed me over. And I felt so bad listening to this particular story that she was telling me. And I was like, I'll do it. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'll take your book and I'll look over it and I'll edit it. And I was just kind of going over the different, levels of editing kinds. And she was like, oh, well, I think I need developmental editing on it. And I said, okay. And she was like, well, I can't not pay you. And in the middle of when she said that, I laughed and I was like, okay, so this is how we're going to start this business now. I just right knew there. I was like, right there, this is how we're starting. And she literally paid me for 3 books to do 3 of her books. Right. And I said, oh, wow. And I said, okay. And I told her essentially why I was laughing and what was going on. And she was like, it was meant for you to launch it. She was like, because you have such a passion for it. And you have not just a passion for yourself, but for other people. And I think that's why it was being placed on you, because there's so many scammers and schemers that God wants somebody in place who's going to look out, not just for themselves, but for others. And I said, you know what? You're right. And that's how I started.
Speaking of scammers and schemers, you got so much experience. I know you've seen it. I know, like, what do you, it's literally flooding. They are flooding this industry, and they're preying on these new writers. And it's a shame. Like, what is your opinion of them?
Oh my God. Yes, it is. I mean, it's becoming the whole East Coast, West Coast of the 90s in the literary industry.
Yeah,
it's horrible. I mean, I think it's bad, to take advantage of people's dreams and their livelihood, essentially. Because you have authors who are, making this is what they do full time. And you have a lot of people that, that are taking advantage of that because they know that people have a passion and they want to make the money and they want to get their names out. And so they are taking advantage of it in different ways. I've seen a lot of things that have come down the pike, even from seasoned, authors and newer independent publishing houses. I think that it's sad and I think that it's unfortunate. But I also know that when you're diving into any type of industry, especially in entrepreneurship, it happens. You have people who are just not going to be, honest. They're unsavory. They're out for themselves. And so the only way that you can really combat that is to do your research and to do your homework. And, don't just willingly sign with someone because you have stars in your eyes. You have to read the contract, ask the hard questions, and, consult with other authors about their business practices. Ask them for a list of their clients and, talk with them and see how it's turning out, And if you do see those warning signs or people, saying it, and I'll be honest, you do have people who you can't please everybody all the time. So they may have a one-off situation, so, you have to just talk to more than just the one person. So, to kind of gauge it on your own. But always, even in that, have your back. Make sure you read your paperwork. Make sure before you sign, if it's something that you don't agree with or something that you, want to change up, hey, broach them with it and, stand firm on it. And if you don't understand it, there's nothing wrong with seeking legal advice. Go to get a counselor, attorney, and ask them, hey, can you tell me about this contract? You want to make sure it's not top heavy for the publisher or whoever else, you want to make sure that it's at least fair to you, and that's the biggest thing that I would tell any author, to understand that writing is your passion, but it's also very much so a business, and you don't want to get had, and that's the biggest thing. You just don't want to get had.
And so on the flip side, how do you feel about authors like when they get jerked and from like people who, you smell it coming from a mile away, like that's a whole scheme, Like how do you? Because you can't save everybody. You know what I mean? Especially it's hard because people are crazy. People, they don't want to take advice. They want to do popularity. They want to go pop, and then they get jerked around, and you're kind of like looking at them like you feel bad for them, but you're like, yo, you should have known. So how does that? Because like even on the publishing tip, like obviously we'll talk about some of this later, but there's a lot of people that are getting jerked around, man, and I feel bad for these writers. But you having your publishing company and knowing that person could easily sign with you and been good, but instead they went for like popularity and they end up getting jerked. Like, what is the message? What is the overall message to writers? Period. New, old, whatever. Like, what is your message to them in terms of that?
I always say this, and this is my biggest thing. I don't click up. I don't click up. I support who I support 100%. And I'm going to support you if you're deserving of it. And I always say this, for me, writing is a passion. And I'm not looking for anyone or looking to anyone who this is just a come up or a get rich quick type of scheme or, some way to make coins. Because you have a lot of people who just, they go along to get along. They see somebody doing this and they jump on that bandwagon. Then they're off that bandwagon to another one, just they're going with the trends and the popularity. And so I would say, to anyone that's listening, like if if this is what you want to do, follow your passion for it. If it's not your passion, then you're going to end up going down some rabbit holes that you might find yourself later going, what did I do? Because you're chasing the trend, so I don't follow the trend. I don't click up. You go with people who genuinely and honestly support other people and not just try to band everybody together because you're trying to make $1. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Or you're trying to get your name out there, because you also have to be cognizant of who you tie your name to as well. Because there are people out here who will not do business with certain people because they know that they're scammers.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're linked to them and you might not be a part of you, but you're just doing it to be a part of this popular clique, then you're tarnishing your name.
Yep.
You always have to be cognizant of your name, be cognizant of who you're doing business with, and, just do everything earnestly because of the passion of it, because you believe in this person's ability, you believe in their talent. And I think that will get you a lot further than just trying to do something, going along to get along, to make $1, to be popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're gonna be guilty by association, regardless. Like you said, yeah, they're gonna be lumped right into there with them scammers. So, yeah,
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And I don't think they realize that. I don't think once your name, you could rebuild your name, but in this industry, once you got dirt on your name, it's tarnished. You ain't gonna coming back from that. You know what I mean? You're always gonna have that over your head.
It's not. It's not, because, you have some seasoned authors who are out here. And when I say seasoned, I'm just not saying, like some heavy hitting names that controversy follows them every time their name is mentioned. And you really have to, and that's why you say it's going to follow you regardless. Like, it's some authors out here who have been in the game for 20, 30 years, and they are popular. And the first thing you hear about them when you get into the industry, now as a reader, you might not really pay attention to it or hear it. But once you get into the industry, the first thing you hear is the negative stuff, that has followed them, even if they've changed, even if this, was one thing. So you have to really be mindful of what you do and who you tie your name to, because I don't care. It'll still follow you.
Right. Oh, hell yeah. And what about the writers who do get caught up? And obviously, like, the game itself can be discouraging, but I can't imagine getting scammed and falling for that. So what, if there's writers out there that get scammed and get discouraged and figure like this is not the industry for them based off one bad experience, or maybe two. You know what I mean? Depends, like, how much, people the fool out there. But like, what do you recommend them staying out the game, or do you tell them would you tell them to like dust themselves off and get back at it and learn and just do the research? Like, what would you think?
I would tell them, dust your stuff off. I do think that you have to take some time, take a step back, gather yourself, don't just be like, okay, you know what? This happened to me, and so tomorrow I'm going to sign with somebody else. No, you need to take a step back. You need to actually learn what happened, figure out what happened, how to make it better, how to correct it on your end. And also, I will say this, and we were talking about how, getting into social media, getting into the limelight and the public eye is needed, but you also have to learn restraint. So one thing that can benefit authors is if you do find yourself in a situation, don't jump on social media blasting and talking reckless and saying, all these different things. Refrain from it. Sit back and learn, observe, figure out what's going on, find out, the truth of what's going on, and figure out how you can correct your situation, and then approach it from a stance of, this happened to me. This is what I did. If you want to help other people, come from a place of positivity and helpfulness, even if, it's the situation that you were really wrong and you were really scammed, because even that will follow you. Because the first thing as a business person I look at, and this is how I approach everything, even as an author, whether I'm doing it under a publishing company or I'm doing it as an author, I want to be able to tailor what I say and how I say it, because I don't want anybody to say this person is not someone I would want to do business with. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and that is even down to the little things. I talk to authors who like to, you know, ask me for advice. They're like, well, what's something that's a pet peeve? I hate when an author gets on there and they go off about a book review, you know, on social media. I mean, your book is out there, it's going to get reviews. Sometimes we do know that people do, you know, try to leave heinous reviews sometimes based off the author.
Oh, yeah.
But,
people be hating.
You can't slam everybody who gives you a negative review, even if it hurts. You know, you have to have thick skin.
Right.
Take it with a grain of salt, take it on the chin. But you always have to be cognizant of how you present yourself, you know, and that's more so for business purposes, because as an author, if your ultimate goal is to sign a major deal, a major deal isn't going to come where drama is. You know, they have a business to run. And then they also know that, like I said, their bottom line is always their dollar. And if they feel like their dollar is going to be jeopardized by defamation of character lawsuits and all of this kind of stuff, they're not going to want to sign somebody that they always have to try to defend and battle in court, you know. So it's that, you know, it's a twofold. You know, they're also looking at your character and how you represent yourself as well. That's a big issue too. So when you get those major machines come with money, and with money comes the piranhas, you know. So you have to be mindful to try to protect their dollar too.
Oh yeah. Once you attach to the name, you drag them in it with you.
Yes, yeah. You drag them in there with you, they will drop you like a hot potato.
Oh hell yeah!
They don't want to have to pay anybody extra.
Hell yeah! Yo, shout out to the book reviews, man, especially the dumb ones. Since we brought them up, I had no problem with book reviewers like the. My issue comes with the dumb stuff. Like somebody will read a book, pick up a book called the podcast, short story, and leave like a 3-star review. Oh, this book was good, but it was just so short. Like, hold on. Like you knew you knew there was a that's the reviews that burn me up when I read some people reviews. It's like, yo, you said nothing negative about this book. And and the readers that leave bad reviews because of the way the book turned up, like the way it ended. Oh man, I wouldn't have ended like, what? It's crazy, man. And then shout out to the janky publishing companies doing their competitors leaving bad reviews. People messy, man. This is messy.
The janky, they are. I will say this. I've learned to even accept those reviews, the ones that do sting, and I haven't had this. Hopefully, I won't. Ever are the reviews that people leave because they don't like the author,
right,
or they're trying to compete, you know, with the author. Because I mean, and that's just true. You can read it. They'll say, you know, I've seen reviews of people they've left a 1-star review and they didn't even review about the book.
Oh yeah,
they're like, I don't like the author.
Yeah.
Like,
oh
what?
yeah, I don't like the title. Like what?
It has nothing to do with the book. I don't like the title. I don't like the author. You know, they're just saying these different things and those come with people having petty arguments with the person who wrote the book. But they just, you know, those are the ones that I'm like, please stop. You know, those are ones that are kind of hurtful when I see them. But I will say this, anybody who's reading the reviews, if you read one like that, then you know that's more of a vendetta one. But
right, exactly. You can tell the difference. You can tell the difference.
Now I will say this. And if an author does vent about that, they have every right to. I'll just be honest. You know, that they do have a right to vent about. But you know, the ones that kind of irk me are when you have someone who's leaving an honest review, like they actually go on there and they tell you why. You know, like, oh, you had a lot of grammatical errors, or you had, the story didn't flow. And they're actually giving you feedback, and you go in and you're malicious to them and say, oh, so now you're an editor. Here's a book reader who thinks they're an editor.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode of the Fiction Addiction Podcast by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, when authors, you know, they criticize reviewers who are actually giving them positive feedback, that irks me. Because I'm like, okay, they're not an editor, but, you know, they don't have to be an editor to tell you if it's horrible grammar, or,
right.
or if the story didn't flow. You have a lot of avid readers out here who really understand how character development and the flow of a story, the plot, sub stories and sub characters work. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a degree. I mean, we don't have to have a degree to write, so they don't have to have a degree to understand how it reads, So it's like, when they say things like that, it's a knock to the reader, but it's also a knock to them because it's a missed opportunity for them to understand how they can make their writing better. And those are the ones you need to value because they are actually bold enough to put in the review, why they gave it the review that they gave it. And, they tell what they like and what they didn't like. And so those are ones that I would love when authors embrace them and say, okay, even if they don't tell them anything, they take it for themselves and they're just like, okay, you know what? I get what they're saying. Now I'm going to go and make sure I do this, or, I'm going to work on story development, because a lot of times they're not saying that they're not going to give the author a second chance. They're just telling them what they feel didn't work in that book and something that they can work on. And, if they take it in, they might have a lifetime fan, but if you're on social media blasting the person who's trying to tell you positively what's going on, then they're like, okay, you know what? It's like a million other authors out here. I don't have to buy your book.
You don't even know who connected. Like, that could be a relative or somebody that work at a publishing company. You up there airing people out. Right.
I mean, and you just never know. Like I've heard of an instance where, a young lady was like in the grocery store and she was talking about she's an author, and, and the cashier was like, oh yeah, well, what's your book? And come to find out, like, she was really, even though she was a cashier, she was connected. Like, she really had some people who could really some things in the game, you know what I mean? And she was like, if I like your book, I'll pass it along. And that's what happened. And that's how, author knew she got signed because of a cashier who liked her book,
that's
so
crazy.
You can't just judge a book by its cover.
Right. Actually,
as the cliche says, you can't judge a book by its cover because you just never know who's interconnected. So I always say, take the, what's the vendetta and what's not. So you have to get off of, I hate, one thing that I wish would die in 2019 is the word hater. Everybody ain't hater.
Yeah, some people ain't got nothing to hate on. Like, what the fuck?
Right. Everybody is not a hater. It's like, and people can honestly feel this way and they have a good reason to. And it's not hating. It's just the truth.
Oh, yeah. So, let's talk about this ghostwriting. Ghostwriting is very interesting to me because I've penned some stuff for some people, and it's interesting. Because especially for a writer, it's two things I want to ask you about. So what do you think about, like, some of the people that have ghostwrite, like you ghostwriting something for somebody? How long you been ghostwriting?
I have been ghostwriting now for a little over a year. So I enjoy it. I will say this. It gives me the flexibility to create a story from an idea that's not my own. So I enjoy that part. Sometimes creativity, you're like, oh my goodness, if I don't have to come up with the idea, then I can kind of go, if you have free reign, you can kind of go the direction you want to go. But I enjoy it. I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, it's my question for you is, because I feel weird about this. When the work is released, it's kind of like behind the scenes, you can like claim the work, but like depending on the contract and NDAs and things like that. You got like some good work out there. Obviously you got some good work out there that you can't really like publicly claim. You know what I mean? Like, obviously goes on your resume. So how do you feel like about like when a project is real good and you're like, damn, I could have kept that for myself. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's one thing for me that was important. It was as far as ghostwriting, because you do have certain projects depending on the contract and everything that you can't, behind the scenes people know, but you can't really, say it publicly or be identified publicly. It was important for me that any ghostwriting contract I secure that I'm a part of. And the only reason I say that is because I want to not necessarily take credit for the work, their work, you know what I mean? But to be able to have that on my resume for myself, to be able to publicly say, in my own deals, in my own dealings, this is what I did. In that way that I could still do that. So the deals that I have secured as far as ghostwriting, my name is featured on there, on the book cover as well, and it's something that is a part of my contract where I say, hey, I don't want to take your primary, give me my piece of the pie, but I just want to be able to say I have this recognition. So that way, even if someone's, it's not public knowledge or really not acknowledged outwardly, that I can still pull it and say, hey, I worked on this and here's proof because my name is on the cover. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's my biggest thing. It's more so when it comes to ghostwriting, just being able to acknowledge it whenever I want to have my own deal. So that way, if I want to continue ghostwriting for other people, I can show my body of work. Or if it comes down to securing bigger book deals and wanting to say, okay, well, let me see your body of work, I can include it for my own, my own dealing. So it's not necessarily to take the shine away from the author who is putting out the work, but just so that I can build my own resume and my own body of work for myself. So that, that's how I like to set up mine. I do know that there, some out here where you can't, it's strictly confidential, and I understand that. I mean, because depending on the meal ticket of it, I'm
about to say, those usually got the bigger bag with it.
Depending on the mail ticket, you got to secure the bag now. I'm not going to tell nobody not to secure the bag. But, I understand it because, if the story is really good and it does, hit, it does kind of hurt in a different way. That's a different kind of feeling because you can't say anything. So I guess in those times, those where you have to kind of weigh the options. I say, if it's going to be that type of deal, then let it be worth your time. If I'm going to have to suck it up and watch my good hard work just be, accoladed to someone else, at least I can feel a little bit better with my bank account sitting a little fat. I was like, I wouldn't do that kind of deal for some pennies. I would have to actually be secure a different way. I'd be like, okay, you know what? But I'm sleeping at night.
Right, I ain't worried about that damn book. I got money. You know what I mean?
Right.
So drop a tip for a ghostwriter, a young ghostwriter that's trying to get in this industry in terms of, like you said, I like that how you have some contribution to the contract to help protect yourself as well. So drop a quick tip for a ghostwriter or someone that wants to get into ghostwriting and is starting out.
If you want to get into ghostwriting, my biggest thing would be is that if it's a way for you to get your name out there, then go for the deals where you're a part of the actual project, not just writing the project, but in the end part. You get paid up front and then you get royalties. Your name is on the cover so that you can have acknowledgement that you were a contributor to the work, and extend that as far as you can. If the person is thinking about taking this book and turning it into a stage play or turning it into an independent film or a major motion picture or TV script, that you get a percentage of that as well. Try to ride that wave as much as you can because you get different earnings depending on the industry that you go into. So, of course, you might get a set amount of money, up front, but you want to make sure that you have the royalties. You can be a part of the royalties on the back end. You can work out the percentage layers depending on, the person and how well, they trust your work. And, but I'll definitely just encourage you to always push for the best deal possible for you, especially when it comes to getting your name out there and keeping it out there. So always, make sure you ask, hey, how far are you taking this? Is this just going to be a book? Is it going to be a series? Is this book or a book series going to go into, any other entertainment form? Is it going in the stage plays? Is it going in the movies? Because I want to be a part of that too. Even if I'm not a part, even if you're, for movies, it's a little different because they bring in writers depending on if you're going with a bigger type of distributor or writing house, or they may bring in their own writers to do the script. But hey, can my name still be a part of this as a contributor, and can I get royalties off of it? And work that into the deal, because with that's to me easy money, because then you don't have to do any of the work. You still just listed as a contributor and you can still get paid.
Right, hell yeah.
And then you still get those IMDb credits,
Yeah, exactly.
So you have your name in different areas. So like if you decide that, hey, I want to go into movie script writing, well, you're already a part of the industry because you have a credit. And they can see that, and it's Googleable. If I'm making up that word, hey, Googleable. It's Googleable. It's in there now.
They put twerking in the dictionary. We putting Googleable in there.
Googleable. It's Googleable in there. So you're Googleable in more than one area. So definitely aim for the best deal possible in as many industries as possible, because that's something that you don't have to work for later.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. So now I'm about to get on my Meek and Drake tip. How do you feel about, and you know it because you're a ghostwriter and not only a writer, and I cringe every time I see a celebrity become a best-selling author, knowing damn well they ain't write that damn book. And it's crazy because, and I bring up the perfect example. I was watching Rick Ross, shout out to Rick Ross, but whatever. I watched his interview on the Breakfast Club, and they asked him about his book. Oh yeah, I think Charlamagne, because he I think he writes maybe 50% of his book or majority of it. So he's, every time somebody come out with a book, he always asks him about the book and the process of writing. And Rick Ross clearly stated, I don't even know what's in it. I just told the book and he wrote it. But Rick Ross is a best-selling author. So I'm like, so how do you feel as an author and as a ghostwriter about, especially celebrities becoming best-selling authors, when you know how much hard work goes into actually writing?
I will say that does trouble me, and it did for a long time. Like when you're a writer and this is your passion, like this is what you do, it does bother you when you see a celebrity from a different, platform, like, rappers and actresses and actors and things, and they say that they wrote a book and they didn't write a single word in it. They just basically told them the idea and the other person wrote it, and they're a best-selling author, and it just adds to their resume. It does trouble you, especially because you know that being in the industry is hard, and it's hard to get your name out there, and it's hard to get people to dive in your work. And then I had to kind of just realize that that's a part of the times. It's still, bothersome now. You still, you look at it and you're like, you didn't write anything, and I'm sitting over here working hard.
Right.
I'm over here struggling, and you're just getting the best-selling tag on there. But then when you start learning the industry, you learn different things, and so certain things start not to bother you as much, because you know that a lot of times their publishing houses are buying their books, so like by the thousands. So it's easy for them to hit the bestseller mark, because
when they're buying all of them,
when they're buying all their books, and it's like, okay, because you do get to wonder sometimes. It's like, okay, I know they're a celebrity, but if you're not really that hot right now, then your book isn't flying off of the shelves that fast. It's a different.
Exactly.
it's somebody like, Lord, we gonna use Rick Ross because we brought him up. But it's the difference between Rick Ross jumping to bestseller in 1 week versus Michelle Obama. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Michelle, like, everybody was running out to buy this book. Like, it was, I promise you, I had never in my life seen an African-American book sold in the shops in the airports.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah.
Michelle Obama's book.
She killed it, man.
Like, wait a minute, that she killed the game with her book. Her book was everywhere, literally. And I was like, okay, so you can see that.
Right.
And she was beloved. She's a beloved public figure. And when she came out with her book, she didn't wait 20 years when everybody had forgotten about the Obama legacy. She hopped on that train as soon as her husband was out. Like, she hopped on it. So, it's a little bit different in that regard to where you have like Rick Ross, where you, not saying that he's on a down scale, but he hasn't really come out with a lot of music, lately. And he was going through some health issues. So when he came out with his book, it's like, okay, you kind of know if you're on the inside, people buying up your book. I don't want to put that tea out there. Whoops, I might have spilled that. But your publisher might be buying up your book to get you to hit that bestseller mark.
Right.
And you also,
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, and it goes back to the like I said again, it's always about the bottom line for the industries, the bottom dollar. They know that a celebrity is just going to come with a different type of tag, and so it's not that they even care that they're writing. They just like the exposure because big names make them big money, and it's, it hurt, it hurts for us authors who this is what we do, and this is what we love to do. And it hurts because you're like, okay, well, what happened to giving us, a chance to get out there and make the New York Times bestsellers list, and the only thing that you're focused on is memoirs and biographies and autobiographies for the celebrities.
Right.
So, it does hit different. But then when you kind of know that it's real, but it does, it's not really real on them, then you kind of sleep a little bit better because you're like, what, he didn't write this book. So it's just something that was kind of thrown at him, and you swallow it a different way versus at first when you kind of don't know the ins and outs of the industry, where you're like, okay, how in the world did he get to be? And then you learn and you're like, oh, okay, you know what? He just is kind of gifted this.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like it just seems like every celebrity is just dropping a book now. And then, like,
it does.
Crazy. I'm like, all right. But there's always one.
And I'll say the benefit of it is that now versus before. And I guess I have to give a little credit to Steve Harvey on this. I think he was one of the first ones who like really publicly came out and was like, hey, I didn't write my book. This is who wrote my book. And even though her name was on the inside, it wasn't on the cover, but he, and we never really would have known that. But he came out and he was one of the first celebrities who like publicly came out and said, I didn't write the book. I just basically, this is what I wanted to write about. I gave it to her. She wrote it. And so with that door opening, you kind of begin to notice, and celebrities weren't bound so much now not to say they didn't write their book. Like, Rick Ross said, hey, I didn't write this. I just gave him the idea, whereas maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even.
He would act like he wrote that.
He would act like he wrote it word for word. Like, what? No, you didn't.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Right. That's true. That's crazy. So, speaking of bestsellers, you are a best-selling author multiple times, right?
Twice. Yes.
Yeah. It's multiple.
Yeah, twice is multiple. Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. So how was that? How was that feeling? Like, when did you find out your book was on the top of the charts? Like, were you watching it, or was it something like somebody else hit you up about it? Like, when did you find out, and how did you feel when you found out about it?
Both times somebody hit me up. I am so nervous when my books are out. I try not to even watch. I watch it now a bit more, only because I think I'm getting comfortable with it, and I'm like, okay, let me just see what it's doing. But back then, I was like, I don't want to know what it's doing. I just want to have it out there, and if it does well, it does well. And I'm not, not gonna be pressed about it. But both times, people hit me up, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "They're like, look, go look." And I'm like, "Oh,
That's
okay."
crazy.
And it was a pleasant surprise. It was. I've always like extremely nervous when I put something out. So even now, like I said, I watch it a bit more now, but it's always like a couple of days later. I'm not one of those authors who are up at like 3:00 in the morning the day the book is like, okay, where did it fall? Where did it fall? And I'm like, you know what? It's out there. It'll do numbers. And, if it's meant to do bestseller, it'll hit. And I just do the work, and I try not to focus in on that part, because that part to me, it'll drive you kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, especially if you have I would say more than one book or a couple of books. If one doesn't, do as well, that can
painful,
be
right.
painful, to sit there and try to watch it. So I've never tried to dive into that and just dwell on it, because I'm always like, you know what? I wrote it, I put it out here, and I feel like it's going to do well. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. But, I just try to shy away from that, because I don't want to drive myself insane trying to watch numbers.
So, also on that tip, put the celebrities aside, because we already talked about them. There's been a lot of controversy lately involving two of the top, one of the top or two, I don't know. They keep lumping more publishing companies in it, in the urban fiction community. And some of the reports that were alleged were that they were fudging numbers and making their authors bestsellers because they were fudging numbers, and then now Amazon's into it. They're investigating. They took books down and all that. How does that make you feel? You know what I mean? Because who knows when these drop, but your book could have been one of the competitors that dropped the same week, same day, and to know that people were cheating and getting to a rank. And then, like, does it feel like it watered down that title as well? Because people have been, using fraudulent tactics to get that title. How do you feel about that type of stuff?
I feel like it's wrong. I made a joke. I was like, yeah, I'm going to come up with a different pen name, fudge my numbers, and release the book and drop it and come back. I made a joke, but I was really joking about it. But I just, to me, it's like, Oh yeah,
like, you can tell.
You can tell. I'm not surprised. It didn't take me by storm. It's like, I'm not surprised, because you could definitely tell. If you've been in it for a while, you could tell. And it's something that I think, too, wasn't a surprise, because it's nothing new. And I think that's what took a lot of people by surprise, is that they felt like it was something new. And I'm like, it's actually not. And I will say the reason why it's not is because a lot of people don't know that it's a lot of white authors that were doing it, before. Yeah. And now they've been under investigation too. They've made their coins and they've been under investigation. Right. But of course it hits different. To me, everything hits different when Black people are involved, the alleged, and I feel like the disservice that I feel like it's going to do is that, because with the two particular publishers, or it's, from my understanding, it's really one publishing house with a lot of different umbrellas. And because there's so many African-American authors in the urban fiction industry that this falls under and it affects, I feel the disservice that it's going to do is that for those who are self-publishing, and that's even for me, because even though I'm signed to Urban, I'm not exclusively contracted. So I still can produce my own self-published work, and I have. I think that Amazon being the conglomerate it is. And I'm not going to sit here and advocate for Amazon because they do some harsh things to authors in the literary industry themselves. I think they're going to make it difficult for people to be self-published now. And even though it's something that's been going on for a while with white authors, because now it includes African-American authors, especially under the urban fiction, and we always got this stigma anyway placed on us, I think it's going to make it harder for, in some type of way on Amazon, for you to become a self-published author in that particular genre. I'm not for sure what it will be, but I just can kind of foresee that it's going to bring some difficulties in and make it a little bit more harder for those authors to make those lists and earning the money through Amazon. And the sad part about it is that Amazon is such a conglomerate that it's hard to move around them. You have other places like iBooks and Barnes and Nobles and all these places like that, but they're not making the dollars and they don't have the visibility as Amazon does. So in the long run, I think it's going to hurt everyone overall because I foresee Amazon putting a lot of stipulations in there now that they didn't before. That's going to hinder authors who are trying to be indie and self-publish. And that's the thing that is going to be, that's going to upset me and a lot of authors, across the industry the most.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a shame that people who legitimately earn that title now have to suffer because of the nonsense. You know what I mean? In so many different ways.
Right.
We just gotta wait and see how it turns out. Like what?
We gotta wait and see. Like, yeah, it's like, but I feel like, people who earn the title and deserve the title, they should have it. But on the grand scheme of things, I'm more concerned about how it's going to impact the ability to even put the work out, and especially with Amazon. They bought out Create Space. They buying up everything. Jeff Bezos ain't lacking for nobody's money. He's buying up. I mean, he's even getting into the medical game. This man out here giving you Amazon Prime on your prescriptions these days. I'm like, good.
You're right. They got Whole Foods. They buy Whole Foods. They buying every freaking thing. Everything
you can think of that Amazon can ship and try to ship, they are into it. Put online, they are doing it. So, they're about to monopolize everything. So when you have a conglomerate that big and especially with Kindle, that it's hard to get around, them, I worry about the impact that it will just have on the publishing period. The ability to make them, not only to earn the titles, but to even put your work out and be able to make good money.
Good money,
through Kindle. Yeah, so that's the part that troubles me the most with it. It's just not so much as, having a title or even the authors who were a part of it, because they can, if they do the right things, they can essentially come back out and put their work back out in different ways. They just have to handle their business legally.
Right, yeah.
But, it's just that I know Amazon is about to shut it down. They're about to put some lockdowns on us that we have never seen before.
Never seen before, right. Oh, my gosh. Can imagine, like, what steps you're going to have to take now just to put your work out there.
Thank you. And like I said, they bought Create Space, which was the other biggest platform as far as independent writers. I mean, you have Smashwords, but it's not as huge at all.
Not at all.
And it's not the same. And before long, we'll be hearing about Amazon bought Smashwords. So
yeah. So they're gonna get once that happens, it's a wrap. It's like you literally are boxed in to go with nobody else but them. You know what I mean? It would be smart on their part, but it'd be a shame for the industry.
Right. Now, if an investor is listening to this and they want to invest in me to buy Smashwords, come on, let's do this thing. I put my plea out to Mackenzie Bezos. You divorced your husband. You want to start something.
Take him over and compete with him.
Girl power. We'll compete together. I got a business plan ready to go for you.
Just sign here.
Right. Let me get my coins and bow out.
Right, yeah, hell yeah. So you were also a writer and interviewer for Swag Magazine, Cali, and South. How was that experience?
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is different. I love writing the articles, the interviews. It was crazy to do an interview. I have mad respect for interviewers. I don't even know how in the world I wanted to go into podcasting, but it was, I think that was just more so my love for authors, but the interviewing, was the most difficult part of it. Writing the articles, that was piece of cake, but the interviewing was a little bit difficult. I was interviewing artists, and sometimes you have to interview them when they're in the studio or, they're out of location so it's hard to do, but I will say I enjoyed the experience of it because I learned how to, conduct interviews, and I learned how to write magazine articles and magazine interviews. And that's something that I had never done before, but I enjoyed that experience. I will say, and it was different and it was still fun because I got to learn firsthand knowledge from people themselves, about their journeys. And that was the fun part, learning and hearing about their journeys and the things that they were doing, how they, sign their deals. And it's very interesting. And I would say, in the entertainment industry, it's such a difference in the literary world and in the music industry. So I got to hear some crazy stories.
Damn. I didn't even think of that. I can't imagine the off the record stuff you were hearing and seeing. Right. And the off the record stuff was crazy. So those were the stories that you get and you're like, wow. That inside information, that was fun, no doubt. So what was your favorite interview? Like, who was the best person you interviewed or your most favorite?
Actually, my favorite interview, he is an indie artist, and his name is Pompey. And that was my favorite one to do because he was so down to earth and so real. And his interview spanned it so much past music. Like I have no clue, but we ended up talking about childhood and his religion and his family. Like, we were talking about voodoo, and he was telling me the history of voodoo. Like, it was a wild interview. Like, he was an open book, and he was just telling me all, and it was like he was a wealth of information. And he's one of those people who you could sit back and just give him like a little Henny and let him talk. And you would just, and he could just go. He'll go, and you would just learn all of these different things, and you would just ask like one question, and it would spark a totally different discussion. But he was so educated and so laid back that it was a great interview.
Man, that's what's up. That's crazy. So we're about to jump right back into your writing. So I checked out a couple of the books. I read The View, but I also checked out a couple of the other ones. I see that you write in different point of views.
Yes.
Which one do you prefer to write in?
I like first person the best.
Why?
Oh my God. You know what? Because it's a little crazy. I think every author is a little touched. But I immerse myself so much into my characters that I take on their persona almost when I'm writing in order to really get into them. And that's why I think I like first person the best, because I feel what the character is going through as I write it. Like I'm in that moment. And I always compare it to, if anybody, like if you've ever watched In Too Deep, the movie In Too Deep with LL Cool J and Yes, when LL Cool J played God in that movie, and he was doing an interview, and he said, after he filmed, he literally had to like take a sabbatical, like for like 3 weeks away from his family, his wife, to come down off of it, because he had immersed himself so much into it that he had to pull himself out of the character, and I tend to be like that when I write. And so first person just speaks more to me because I immerse myself so much into the characters, and I have to pull myself away from them, and out of that, out of who they are. It's like, I'm around it, like it's one character, his name is Pooch. Like, he's so far moved. He's street, and he's just, he's really gutter. And when I was writing his character, I like rap music, but I was really into like thugging it out. You know what I mean? And so I was like, after I wrote his novella, I had to kind of decompress myself, because I was like, I was in this hardened mode.
She's out there ready to get it in the streets.
Ready to get it in. I want to go in the streets.
Yo.
I was like, my attitude was all different. I was like, you know what? Wait a minute. Let me back.
Man, everybody like, oh, what's going on, man?
Going out of these streets.
Yo, so how do you get into that character? Like, how do you get into the different characters, specifically that type of character? What gets you into that mindset? Like, how do you prepare to write for a character like that?
Music is the biggest thing for me. Now, I don't like to write and listen to music. I actually like it to be really quiet.
Really?
Right. But yes, like I think that I get inside my head so much that it just takes me to a different place. But to prepare for something like that, I have to be in a mindset first. So like I'll listen to, music within, like if I know I'm going to write something street, I'm listening to a lot of street music, or I watch movies, that's dealing with a lot of street things that's going on, so that my mind is kind of there. And, because, with writing it, especially if you're writing something that's outside of who you are, your everyday life, and even if you're going from genre to genre, like I tend to do, you have to kind of immerse yourself into what that genre is about. You know what I mean? So it's like to be able to connect to the life, the lingo, all of that stuff. You need to kind of connect with it in a different way. Sometimes it's movies, sometimes it's, music, or I've gone even so far as to like talk to people who are in the streets and like, okay, so what do you do when you do this, and what happens here? I do that, and I do research. So I actually immerse myself in it, and then when I'm ready, it's like when I'm writing, quiet, because I need to reflect over everything that I've just taken in.
Damn. That's crazy. So you also contributed to an anthology. How was that? How was that experience? Like when you wrote the anthology, did you know the other writers that were going to be in the book?
I did not know the other writers that were going to be in the book.
Was it like some competition?
I got the thing. No, and it was like, and I think that's what made it better, because I didn't know. And it was like, it was part of one of those where they said, okay, this is what we want to do. And I think part of me being a part of the anthology was the reasoning behind it. It was more so, this is what we want to do, which it was during the time that Alton Sterling, was killed by the police. And so it was, we want to do an anthology about loving Black men and just highlighting what Black men mean to us. And the person who came to me, with the idea, came to a couple of different authors. We didn't know who all was going to be there, but just knowing what it was about, and then saying we want to donate the proceeds, to like the NAACP to help with these cases and these families who are going through this police, brutality, and also police killings. It was like, okay, I'm in, I got you.
Right.
It wasn't even a second thought, because during that time, of course, then afterwards we had Philando Castile. I think before we even released it, Philando Castile was murdered, and it was just knowing, being a mother of Black boys, being married to a Black man. Of course, my father is Black. Just being that person who, as a Black woman who has to shoulder these Black men, it touches you in a different way because you're always present, in the thought that this could have been them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that we live with every single day. Like, that is a constant on our mind, especially my sons are now teenagers. And I am constantly, like, praying to keep them covered because I don't want to ever have to get that phone call like, this is what happened to your son. Because my kids are good kids, And
right,
I know like people say that, but they really are good kids. Like, it's like
but
like,
even if they weren't,
even if they
don't
weren't,
nobody deserve to die or get killed. You know what I mean?
Like, it's like they deserve to die. It's like, even if they weren't good kids, nobody deserves to die for something, and not period, but especially in the sense of what tends to happen is
the color of the skin, basically. You know what I mean?
Their color of their skin, and they're not doing anything. Like, they got, if you're out here wilding out, you're doing something, but you weren't doing anything in that moment. And so the media tries to take everything in the world in the past and say, oh, but they did this and they were a part of this gang and they were that. But he was walking from the store.
Exactly.
He wasn't doing that, then. So it's like, I always say, it just, those are the reasons. It's like, it really, it hurts, and it makes you angry. It always keeps you cognizant, and it always keeps you, like I always tell people, I say, be Black is to always live in a constant state of fear for something. It's like, especially being Black in America, you always live in a constant state of fear. It's like, it's not a day that goes by that I'm not concerned, about the well-being of my, cousins, my brother, my husband, my sons, the moment they hit the door, So doing a project like that was more than just, doing it to be a part of something. It was doing it because it actually had a meaning and it meant something specifically for everyone involved, even though particularly the reason why didn't impact us directly, but it does. Because like I said, any given moment, it could be one of us. And so...
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's that portion right there was like, yeah, oh, of course, yes, and I don't mind.
Did you let your sons and your husband read the contribution in your father in that book?
I did let them read it, and they loved it. I didn't, I told them, I said I wanted to do more like a letter to them. And that's what my contribution was. It was more like a letter to, the Black men in my life, just letting them know how valued they were and how important they were to me, even if society doesn't see that, see them that way. To understand that they are important, their role in this world and in others' lives is important. And I think that's where all of our Black men fall down with law enforcement and just other races, is that people just don't value them. They don't see their importance, into the contributions of this world. And I'm like, that's what, needs to be honored, is that you all are valuable and you add value, and you always have, and you always will.
And that's crazy because I don't think that's talked about enough. You know what I mean? So, and the reason I asked you, did you share it with them? Because I'm sure there was a moment where either you guys had a discussion, they looked at you and you looked at them, and you realized that they're reading something that they didn't know, like the value and importance. And that's so crazy because I think especially in the younger Black males, is like, like you said, they just don't know their value. Like, they just don't know how loved they are. They just don't know how appreciated they are. And the same can go with the same for young Black women and Black women in general. But it's just crazy that we have to have these conversations, just tell people how important they are.
Right. And that's like, you would think like people would know, yeah, you're valuable. But they see, and I think so much they're told that they're not valuable. And they're told in such the either out, nowadays it's more direct because people just don't care. I always say that's a part of the Trump era is that people are so outright that you're not valued. But it's been so indirect for so long, and we see it in a different way. Like the incident with Michael Vick, you know what I mean? Like he was convicted all those years ago, served his time for dogfighting, right? And now, years later, he has his, he's done his time. He's developed so much into just creating this new persona of himself and giving funding and aid to, the help the animals and against dogfighting and all this stuff. And he's trying to do different things with his career. Like they wanted him to be in a Pro Bowl, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we want to boycott. We wanted this, we wanted that. And it's like, okay, well, you're saying this about him and he's paid his debt to society. You still want to come in his neck. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, let's be for real. It's wrong to dogfight, but you know what I mean? This man is a whole human. He's a human being. He deserves a right to make a living. He deserves a right to, repent, and he deserves his right. And it's like, okay, so you can't forgive him for something that happened years ago that he's paid his debt for society over a dog. And a dog is not a human being. He's a human being. He has the right to, you should want to embrace him. So it's like, the value even in that is like, okay, we 10 years later want to value these dogs' lives over you having the ability to provide for your family, for your kids.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it was like unrelated. It's like the Pro Bowl. Like, what the heck does that got to do? Why now? Because he's been doing the commentary. So why all of a sudden the Pro Bowl was the big thing that people wanted to boycott or cancel him for? It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And I think because anytime anything is highlighted, like, okay, if it's under the table, because everybody's not watching, like ESPN or Fox Sports and things to see where he's popping up at. You see what I'm saying? And he's doing commentary. Mm-hmm. But something that's highlighted and that's made public knowledge and in the public eye, then they want to boycott, so it's like when he was going back into the league to become a QB, you had all of these different cities boycotting him. Philadelphia was boycotting him. It was business owners that was like, he couldn't even step foot into their business, and it was insane. Like they were burning jerseys. And so I think it's just more so the things that are highlighted and brought into the public eye are what make them just kind of latch on again to the same story. So even if it was the commentary that he was doing like on ESPN or over when I'm a big sports fanatic, so like when he goes over to Undisputed, sometimes he shows up there. So if things like that were highlighted, then of course he would still catch it. I think he would catch it every time he tried to make a move. But it's just more so because those kind of go under the radar that they don't, latch on to it. But anything, of course, that's put into the public, makes the media, then it becomes a thing. And so now they've reattached themselves to this via the Pro Bowl. And it's crazy. And it's like, okay, this man has served his debt to society and he acknowledges what he did was wrong and what he was a part of was wrong. But you got all of these, and let's just put it out there, we want to talk about animals in general, because if you talk to, certain race, they just say, oh, we have to protect the animals. I see nobody going this hard for these people who over here killing lions, tigers, and bears in Africa. Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's okay, though, because they got money, so that's okay.
Right.
But and it's not even like Michael Vick messed up again. Like, he's been...
He's straight
clean ever. Not even like a I don't even know if he got a damn parking ticket since that incident. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, he has been so straight-laced. He is the epitome of reform. Like, if everything going to prison was supposed to do, if that's what it was supposed to do, is to turn you into who Michael Vick is now, then that would be the reason to advocate for having a prison sentence. You know what I'm saying? Because he is the most reformed person I have ever seen. Like, you said, he doesn't even have a scratch on his character, on his anything he's done throughout his entire personal, professional life since then. And you still can't let it go. Like, I just, you just don't understand it, and I compare it to those same people want you to sit here and just trash and dog and drag Michael Vick. But then the same week you hear Trayvon Martin with the Trayvon Martin story where George Zimmerman is talking about suing the legal counsel and his parents for
the parents,
supposedly, planting evidence against him about something that he did. It's like
he did.
That he did.
One of the things he did, because he was still messing up after that. He's been in jail 3 or 4 times after the incident, but that's okay though, because you know what I mean? Because he didn't kill a dog. He didn't
kill a dog, so it was okay. It's okay that he was able to cash in a GoFundMe and become basically rich off of people donating money to him because he killed an innocent, black teenager. And we want to stop and withhold Michael Vick from making money and being able to sustain for his family and doing a career that he has trained his entire life for because he killed a dog. That's
that
why
I say, man. They better try that again.
right. So it's like, and that's why I say it's like they've been shown indirectly that their black men are undervalued. Like, your life is worth less than a dog. Because that's how we treat you. And that's how, and that's how, not us per se, but the world treats you. And you have people on the other end of the spectrum killing black people. You have the lady cop that, walked into the apartment and in the man's apartment killed him. And people hugging her, giving her Bibles. I'm not even gonna get off in that.
Oh yeah.
And then you have, like on the other end of the spectrum, you have George Zimmerman over here who killed Trayvon Martin, and he's getting money. He's been to jail 3 or 4 times, and nobody is fussing and complaining or saying, you know what, we need to put a stop to this. It's crazy to me. Yeah. It's crazy to me, and it just shows you how underappreciated the black man is in America, and that's why I say, doing the anthology was important, because not only now are they shown or told directly that they're undervalued, they've been shown indirectly for years that they're undervalued. And I think it's important for them to know that about them and to understand that, in the words of Tupac, that we care, don't nobody else care about y'all.
So what do you think about the cancel culture? Because especially the Michael Vick, I think that's part of this cancel culture that society has now. What do you think about that? Is it something that's needed, or is it something that goes too far sometimes?
It goes too far. I mean,
even the T.I. situation, like the T.I. situation with his daughter and the whole Hyman thing, that was crazy, period. Like, I know a bunch of fathers that will sit there and say, what? Either what? I ain't doing it. Or they may agree with him. But I think personally, that was a moment to educate him and not sit here and try to cancel. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. And I'll say this, and I have taken so much flack for this. I really have. I've taken flack for it, so I'll probably get some more flack. I was one of the rare females who wasn't bothered by what T.I. said. I really wasn't. And I wasn't bothered for one reason. I knew, and this was me knowing without really knowing before he actually said it. I'm like, he's not in the room with the girl with a flashlight. Now, come on. You know what I'm saying? And then I was like, and plus 2, she's 18 now. Obviously, he's talking about something that happened when she was underage. You know what I mean? And and I say I wasn't bothered is because not so much of the fact that it had anything to do with him violating her personal space and her body, but I knew it was more so a level of concern as a father. You know what I mean? Like, you want to protect your kids, you know, especially your daughters. You know, these days and age, there's so much stuff out here, and you have so many people sleeping around and carrying so many diseases, and and we have to value our sons too. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it's something about a father and a daughter. You know what I mean? Where he wants to protect his little girl. You know, in my heart of hearts, I felt like that's where he was coming from, and so that's why I wasn't so bothered by what he said that he was doing. Now, should he have shared it? Hell no.
Hell
no. If anything, that bothered me the most. I was like, I know it's one of those things, like, you know, when you have your kitchen table talk, it's some things that you say at the kitchen table that you don't take out the house, you know?
Right, exactly.
And that was one of them. It's like, okay, y'all do this in the house, but you don't take that outside the house, T.I. Come on now.
Hell no.
You know, you keep that in your household. If that's what you do in your house, then you let that be in your house. You don't tell the world that. You know, I think he got caught up in the fact that he's a celebrity. He got comfortable sharing because celebrities are open books, you know, and he got comfortable being an open book. And so he got a little bit too comfortable. And so he started oversharing. And I think that's when we have to learn how to back off. And it's like, okay, let's honestly take a for real look back and just say, is he honestly doing this and this girl is 18 years old? No. You know getting well he's not doing this since she's 18. You know getting well that whatever intent he had wasn't malicious. It wasn't as mannish as it may have sounded. You know what I mean? And that's why I say certain things. That's why I think cancel culture is just gone too far, because with everybody being able to access your personal information and say whatever they want to say on social media and offer their 2 cents without giving any thought or reverence as to what the true situation is or what's really going on, then they create this firestorm that's unnecessary. And it takes away from things that we really need to be having a firestorm about, you know? And I feel like, you know, now it's just gone too far. Because if you give somebody a little bit of an inch, they taking a mile. Like, cancel culture was
taking it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, cancel culture was for things that were majorly wrong. Like this whole the Me Too movement with Harry Weinstein and all of these people who were taking advantage of these women, and, you know, for all of these years for their gain, or, you know, molesting young boys or young girls. Yes, you know what? I don't have any tolerance or patience for stuff like that, you know, or even, you know, the murdering of people. You know, yes, those are things that you should be sitting here talking about. Okay, yeah, cancel this person, cancel that person.
Cancel this person, right.
But, you know, a comedian can't make a joke without them being, oh, we want to cancel them. We don't want them to have a career anymore. It's a joke. Learn to laugh. Damn, you know?
Right.
It's not. It may not even be how that person really feels. It's just something that's funny, you know? And I was like, you know, come on. The purpose of comedy is to be slightly inappropriate. You know what I mean?
Right. It's always been that way. And that's why some people can't even separate it, because it's always been that way.
Exactly. And I was just like, you know, because they even tried to cancel Dave Chappelle, you know, after his last.
Oh, we ain't doing that. They better try harder than that.
It's like, it's still, and he said it himself. He was like, you know, forgive me, but he was like, the alphabets are going to be coming for me after this. And he was like, the alphabet.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, it's hilarious. I was like, you know, just learn to take a joke, because it's not something that he obviously means. And even if he did mean it, it's not like he's caring enough to make a true stance against it, you know?
Exactly. Right. He's not sitting there starting a movement against y'all. He's just making jokes. He's
making jokes. And so that's where I was like, you know, I think they just need to stop it, because it takes away from what we really need to cancel out, and now everything is canceled.
Right.
Every time you say something, somebody's canceled.
Cancel.
It's just
Cancel.
like, they're canceled. This person's canceled. That person's canceled. I'm like, y'all ain't gonna be able to do nothing.
Nothing. Can't even breathe without getting canceled.
Right. You can't breathe. Like, you was breathing too hard and that offended me. So now we need to cancel you.
You can't. Right. Exactly. So speaking of cancel culture and second chances, are we giving out second chances to our industry people, or people in our industry that mess up? Or are we canceling them?
Oh, man. It depends on what it is. It depends on what it is. I mean, and I think it depends on your repetitive actions. You know what I mean? To me, that's what a cancel culture is about. It's like, we can redeem you, like, for certain things. And then if you repeat it, then we gotta, we gotta do what we gotta do. But, I mean,
right.
It depends on to me, as I get so many layers, it depends on the severity of it and, what it was about. Like, I'm not trying to cancel Kevin Hart for a joke he made, a homophobic joke that he made back in 1995. You know what I mean? I'm not going to cancel him for that. He's grown, he's evolved, he's a different person. But now, it's one of those things, if you're around here beating up on somebody or, doing hate crimes against, transgender or gays, then okay, you need to be canceled at this point. But I just not, I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna be bothered by something you did in 1995 because people tend to forget. People grow, they change, they evolve. They leave no room for growth. They leave no room for someone to evolve. And it's like, I'm not even going to be the same person I was 2 days ago. If you, sometimes.
Right. Let alone years ago.
Right. It's like, I mean, and then sometimes you could be like a different person in a moment because you could have a belief, you know what I'm saying, of something, and somebody will give you a different perspective and it changes everything you thought about.
Changes you.
You're right. And it's like, they don't leave room for that. So I like I said, I feel like we should, but it also depends on the severity and what you did. Like, if you're around here, molesting little kids, you
gotta go. You gotta go.
I'm sorry. That's a hard stop. You don't get a chance to rehabilitate your stuff in my mind. I mean, I may be wrong, but I'm just like, no, you know what? I draw the line somewhere. That's where I draw my line. I'm sorry. I can't get with that. You can't be out here bothering babies and old people.
Right. Yeah. It's rules to all this stuff out here, man. You can't cross certain lines.
Certain lines.
To have a livelihood after this.
Right. It's just certain lines you can't cross and then feel like you could just kind of come back. Like, I'm not, I might sit here and if person has changed their ways and say, I forgive you, but I ain't finna let you run a daycare center.
Right, exactly.
Right. It's not gonna happen.
Still keeping an eye on your ass.
Right. It's like, what? Yeah, okay. It's all you did that once 20 years ago. But you still can't come over here and work in this school.
Right, exactly. So boom. Sticking on the